This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle Academy, where filmmakers and screenwriters go to learn from top Hollywood industry professionals. Learn more at ifhacademy.com. I'd like to welcome to the show returning champion, Jonathan Wolf. How you doing, Jonathan?
Alice, good to see you.
Good to see you too, my friend. It's become now an annual event for you to come on the show. You've been, like 4 years now, I think?
3 or 4 times, yeah.
Yeah, you've been on for like 3 or 4 times, and I've had the pleasure of speaking at AFM once before the world went to hell, and then and even in the online version last year and again this year, and it's been a pleasure working with you and AFM and having you on the show. And we always have wonderful dialogues depending on where we are in the world. What's going on in the world. So first of all, this year I was planning to fly back out to LA in November. Like when I left LA to move to Austin, I'm like, oh, I'll be back in November for AFM. I'll fly in and we'll do all this stuff. And then of course the announcement came like, we're going online again, guys. So first of all, how did AFM do last year with the online? I personally enjoyed the online experience. It's not the physical experience. It never will be. But it was really cool. You had little places you can jump off. You can talk to people. It was you guys really did a lot to make it as realistic as being there as possibly you could be in the digital realm. So it was a very cool experience. But how did AFM do last year in online?
It depends on which measure you look at. Clearly, from our standpoint, from an economic standpoint, we're not going to have the same fundraising activity for our trade association that we would if we were in Santa Monica. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying to look at the glass as being half full, what was really cool is that we had speakers and participants from all over the world that would have never participated, couldn't afford to travel. We had speakers from Nigeria, South Africa, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, France, the UK, all staying in their offices or home, participating on sessions. The vast majority wouldn't come to the AFM more than once every 4 or 5 years. And the participants that were there, it's the same thing. We had people all over the world where the economics of travel just don't make sense. So from the standpoint of the sessions and the education and that kind of networking, it was terrific. And as you mentioned, we brought in some technology that really allowed some of that serendipity of bumping into people take place online. And one of our areas, we call it the networking building. It's literally 150 tables over 10 floors where you can go sit at a table online and meet 4 or 5 other people at the same table. But you get to mouse over their face in advance to see what their title is, see what they do, to decide whether you want to be in that conversation or not. And that's where we just got tremendous feedback. Because my analogy sort of is if you walk into a large cocktail party, a networking event, and you go person to person, group to group, and you find out they're all talking, you're into docs, and the first guys are talking about horror, and the next group are talking about animation, and you never find the group that is talking about docs, and you leave the networking event saying that was a bust, and it happens to all of us. Then you come to our networking pavilion, where there are tables that have themes, there are floors that have 2 themes. You can mouse over the people and see who's there before you actually join a conversation. And so from a networking standpoint, a lot of people found it even more efficient. The downside is for those who participate at the AFM purely for transactional purposes. I know I'm talking about producers coming to pitch scripts and pitch finished films. It doesn't work because you're not able to do that. You're not able to walk into the doors of sales companies and go door after door, see what they're into and see if they're interested in your film. So the transactional piece for producers was less, but in some ways the networking was actually more, and the education was best we've ever done.
So in the moving down the line, hopefully in the next couple of years, this pandemic will be a little bit more under control than it is with us. I think it will be with us. It's going to be with us for a long time. But it will be to a place like it'll be a seasonal flu, hopefully.
Flu shot, I hope.
Yeah, hopefully something like that moving forward. How do you see a hybrid version? Is this changed AFM forever in one way, shape, or form?
It's probably changed how participants value an event. If someone's going purely for the education and the sessions, they can look at this and say, boy, if that's being offered online, I don't need to travel. I don't need to be in the room at that time in the 40th row, trying to hear what's going on. I can do it online. So it may have diminished a little bit the desire for education on site. But the parts that I talked about before, the ability to pitch, to meet people, the word access. There are a few pillars of the AFM. One of them is access. You get access to the industry. You can only really get access face-to-face. You can't get that online. Mm-hmm. Networking, you get a different mix of networking online versus face-to-face. There's a little bit more serendipity face-to-face. Who do you bump into at a bar, at a restaurant, things like that. You see an old friend introduces you to someone else. There's more of that. We can repeat some of that online. And a key pillar beyond education, access, networking is visibility. A lot of people in our industry, this is what you seek out. You want to be noticed, whether you're on a stage pitching a script, whether somebody has written something about you, you've been introduced to others, that ability to be seen, not just to see, but to be seen. That can only happen at a live event successfully, where you can market yourself in that way. So we don't see the live events going away at all, but I think how we tweak the value of attending may change. For example, we may pull back a little bit on some of the on-site sessions. We may make the on-site sessions available remotely, because this is the only part you can really do a hybrid. Mm-hmm. Like auctions. You can have somebody online at an auction and in the room. You can have somebody watching the screen like we're talking now, or live in the room. But you actually can't participate in what's a trade show and an event like
walk the halls and things like that.
And so we may take a piece of this and say, for those who can't travel, the piece that we can deliver effectively, which is the education piece, here it is. And yes, we'll set up a networking pavilion also. So for those of you who can't travel, you can speak to each other. What's almost impossible is to get the person who's in Santa Monica to engage with the person who's participating online. Whether it's a buyer in Santa Monica, a seller online, the reverse, the producer online, whatever. The person who has traveled and is at an event is not going to spend any time trying to connect with somebody online. So we may really bifurcate it a bit and offer a smaller online experience for those who can't travel this year, but the bigger physical experience remains.
Yeah, I mean, unless you have computer screens in every single suite, and then they just log in. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. But that's
even if you're in an office and somebody walks in your door and they've traveled halfway around the world at great expense.
Correct.
And they didn't have a meeting scheduled and said, "Can you talk?" And the person online who's sitting on their couch on their iPad says, what do you mean you're interrupting me for the guy who walked in? You get bounced. The person online gets bounced every time.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I think it has. You're right, because I really do. I did enjoy the experience, and having experienced both the live and the online experience. The online experience was really fun. I was actually very surprised at how smoothly it ran. I think you said yeah, me too. It was fairly smooth with the technology, but you're right. Just being there, there's serendipity that you try to emulate online, but it's very, very difficult to do. And again, it's just the stuff that you can't do. Now, I have to ask you the hard question. Knowing now that there's this I think this is a question that every business in the world really needs to ask. Okay, well, we've been online for the last 2 years. Now, next year, let's say, God willing, we have a in-person AFM. Do you think that, huge studios are going to be paying those big ticket items for offices and stuff like that, like they normally do? Or they're going to be we'll just do it, we'll just do the online version. How do you see that? And it's not a gotcha question. Me and Jonathan actually spoke about this earlier, so everyone thinking oh my God, no. We had this discussion originally. So what do you think?
Well, we didn't have the discussion. You asked the question, and I told you I'd answer it.
There you go. That's the discussion we had. Yes.
It's actually going to be somewhat almost neither of those. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I don't expect these sales companies and production companies, to take as much space as they have in the past, and I don't expect them to find value in continuing to be online. What we witnessed actually in 2019, when it was the last time we were in Santa Monica, and it kills me, it's 2 years ago.
Jesus.
The industry the independent sales and distribution slice of the industry, that sector, had already started to contract because of the roles of the streamers. If you look today, this is a renaissance period for those involved in production. There are more people in front of a camera, more people behind the camera, more set decorators, more grips working today than probably any time in the history of filmed entertainment around the world. And it's being driven not by independent film, and it's being driven not even by long form, but it's being driven primarily by narrative series around the world, destined for streamers. I think in the US we've hit 500 narrative series this year on all the various platforms. It's tremendous. But what it's doing is it's taking eyeballs. We only have a certain amount of time we spend in front of a screen, and it is somewhat a zero-sum game. And so it's taking eyeballs away from other places, and it's primarily taking eyeballs away from independent film. That is because of the marketing difficulty of a one-off product. Studios are now moving into programming and sequels, but it's really more taking a page from the television divisions, which is once you launch a series, you don't have to spend the same amount of marketing on the second episode that you did on the first. It's now launched, it's in orbit, and off it goes, and it becomes much more predictable. And having additional episodes is like just making more of the same product until it finally is uninteresting to the audience. When you have a film, whether it's a studio film or an independent film, you're launching a one-off marketing campaign that becomes very expensive. If it's a $200,000 film or a $100 million film, proportionally, it's still a very big piece of the budget, and it's high risk. And so the studios are continuing with their production. All of the series that we're seeing, all the very high-profile series, all the money that's going into this is really squeezing out somewhat the independents. And then you have the streamers coming in buying worldwide rights in some cases. So it doesn't mean that independent film is doomed. It just means that its slice of the pie is somewhat smaller, and that those coming to the market may need a little less space. They may have sold some of their films to streamers, so they're not bringing it to market. So we see the same players. I think we'll see the same amount of attendance, but the amount of transactions that they're doing will be less, which is why we had already planned to shorten the market from 7 days to 5 days in 2020 before we got kicked out by COVID.
Right, exactly.
We'd already shortened it a bit. And
so,
it's still long. If you look at the TV markets, they're 3 and 4 days.
Right, exactly. But I have to ask you, so, and you're absolutely right with what you're saying in regards to the independents being squeezed out and independent film in general being squeezed out. In the 80s, specifically in the 80s and the 90s, you were definitely around in that time period, and it was just money was flying from the sky. It was an insanity for people listening. You just don't even understand the kind of money that was flying around. And even going back further, when in the early days where you have that stereotypical picture of a distributor who's behind a desk smoking a cigar saying, all I need is a trailer and a poster and I can sell that kid. That image, in those days, there was such less competition in the world for eyeballs. Like movies were still movies. The TV had 3 channels, and then slowly but surely things have been getting changing to the point where you said very eloquently now is that there's so much attention vying for our eyeballs. Our eyeballs only have so much time during the day that many filmmakers still create product and independent producers still create product with the mentality of the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s when DVD, where you could put out Sniper 7 for and get it pre-sold around the world in a matter of minutes, where in today's world that might be so much more difficult, if not impossible to do. In other words, the quality of the product has to elevate to even get a fighting chance. So a lot of these independent filmmakers are thinking it's the 90s in the Sundance generation where you could just make your personal independent film and expect to get those checks that Ed Burns or Robert Rodriguez or Tarantino and those kind of guys got. And it's not that world. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I'll add a couple things to it. Just like the 80s and the early 90s, a lot of money flowing around. There's a ton of money flowing around right now, probably more, but it's all targeted at the series. It's all coming this time from the platforms rather than individual investors. In the 80s, if you weren't happy with a 15% return in the stock market, you tried to get 20% out of the film industry. It was a strange time. I worked at New World Entertainment. They'd make a movie for television and then sell 50,000 cassettes to stores after it was on network television and get $2 million in video revenue simply because there was no video store in the country that couldn't have one of everything. If somebody came into your store, you had to have one of everything. There are 30 or 40,000 video stores, so you always sold 30 or 40,000, and you made $1.5 million or $2 million in revenue
every time
on every film. Just out it went. I mean, it was crazy, but it's similar today to platforms that are valuing market share over profit.
Right.
They need market share of consumers. They don't mind running at a loss. They need to build their business while they can. It was the same with the video stores in the 80s. They couldn't have you drive by your store or go somewhere else. They had to have that share of their local audience, so they had to have one of everything. So this is a bubble, but it may not burst right away. This may go on for quite a while because the players are not mom and pop video stores. The players are Disney, HBO. You've got giant players who are in this for the long haul. And I think that's just terrific for everybody who works in film. But if you just happen to work in this slice of the film industry, which is the independent producer making spec films, you have the highest risk. And it came about at the wrong time. And it's the wrong time. By that I mean, it would have been better if this was 20 years ago and we didn't have digital cameras and production wasn't so inexpensive. The access to being able to film inexpensively for the aspiring or the emerging producer, the access to crews, the access to cameras, the access to digital, how you edit, all the things that you do are much less expensive and can be learned more quickly. And then you throw that in, of course, of all the growth of all the film schools. And what we've done is we've churned out a lot of people who want to practice their craft, who want to bring their art forward, who find that the economics of making it more cheaply are there, but the marketplace is not in sync with their desires.
And I think also, just as filmmakers listening, I think their expectations of what a career in the film business is not what they were originally told. And that could be, that's a very, there's a very Pollyannic way of looking at you just make your movie and Hollywood finds out how genius you are and all this kind of stuff. But originally, when I went to film school in the 90s, it was like you can get a job on set or in production and you make a movie. I came up in the 90s, so you make an independent film, one every couple years if you're lucky, and you could build a career off that. In today's world, you got to almost, if you're going to do independent films, you've got to make maybe 2 or 3 a year to have just a decent living. And that's at the top 1% of everybody doing it. And that's not what a lot of people listening want to hear, but it's the truth. It is a very difficult thing to generate revenue from being a producer, an independent producer, especially when you're starting out. And I know, and producers as well, who've been doing this for 20, 30 years, and and distributing companies, they're just like, we don't know what to do. The game keeps changing on us. It's insane.
It's funny you say that. A close friend of mine who's made more than 40 films, some of them very high profile, some of them smaller independents, he basically just shook his head and said, the way it's changed, I can't connect. I'm just going off and doing something else. Now, he can. You have 40 or 50 films. But the difference is he made those films at a time where he kept the rights or they reverted back after licensing deals expired. Today, the platforms are taking the Netflix approach, which is, here's your check. Thank you very much. You made a nice profit, but that's it and it's ours forever. Producers have become work for hire laborers, if you will, versus business builders and owners of their content. And while writers and directors and actors have residuals that they can live off of and help sort of support them between projects, producers used to have profit participation, ownerships, rights reverting back to them, that in many cases that's not true anymore if you take a streamer's deal. And so they're starting to chip away at you, if you will, at the business model for the entrepreneur to create a business. And now the producer is, if you find one, great, here's your fee, go find another. But you're not getting paid in between.
And you said, directors, writers, and actors have residuals. That's also shrinking dramatically. I mean, the days of the Friends cast or the Big Bang cast getting $1 million a year off of residuals, off of syndication, those days are starting to go away too, because
I think those big numbers were more their profit participation than their union residuals. But sure, all those things. When you see a series on Netflix now that's extremely high profile with Nicole Kidman, you know that she got a big check, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. But they get a big check up front. So you select, and the same thing for the producers, the same thing for the directors. If you're doing something for the streamers, but if you have a product that you're trying to sell to the streamers, that's a very different conversation. And I always find it funny because a lot of directors, a lot of filmmakers I talk to, they're like, well, Martin Scorsese or Spike Lee or Kevin Smith or these kind of directors, they'll get deals at these streaming platforms. And I'm like, the only reason they are getting deals is because they were able to build their brand off the back of the studios at a different time when that was possible. If Kevin Smith shows up today with Clerks, no one would ever see it. Same thing for El Mariachi, same thing for Brothers McMullen. Basically, almost any movie in the 90s other than maybe Reservoir Dogs would be lost. And even then, Reservoir Dogs could possibly be lost. And they wouldn't have the careers they have today. So it's just such a different world than when it was before.
So one wonders, where are we going to be in 10 years when the same system of bringing forward that talent and allowing them to take risks and be discovered isn't there? And it's now all conglomerate driven.
I argue we're already there.
Well, they're still going back and finding the Kevin Smiths, and they're finding some of the others. But how
gotcha.
It's the entrepreneurs, the producers. They're the risk takers, and they're the ones that discover the new talent. And Roger Corman is the poster child for having done this so many times, and so many careers launched or discovered by him.
Yeah, and I mean, I just had Jason Blum on the show, and it was amazing to see. He's one of the few guys doing it at $5 million and below level. Mind you, he has the sweetest deal. And I told him that, I'm like, you've got the sweetest deal in Hollywood history. And he's like, yeah, I know. Because I don't think they're going to have that again. But he's able. But if you look at his model, genre-based, most of the time genre-based, $5 million and below, $3 million and below. Sequels could go up to $10 million. And even then, only if the director is seasoned. So he'll give an M. Night Shyamalan $10 million. But he won't use new directors. He only used seasoned directors. It's really interesting, but that's a business model that is working right now.
But it's interesting, and you use the right phrase. It's a business model. And I wish that most producers would look at what he's doing and understand that he's really starting with the marketplace and with the customer and working backwards, because his goal is to make a profit.
Shocking, right? Shocking.
His goal is not to make films that he likes, and whatever they happen to do, they do, and who cares? Mm-hmm. His goal, and the goal of most successful film companies, is to make a profit. And that isn't always the goal of the independent producer who's putting together a film. We talked before we started, I'm going to have an ensemble genre with 8 or 9 characters, and it's a coming-of-age story set in a small U.S. town.
I need $3 million for that.
And everybody's going to love it.
And no cast. Cast that we recognize. And
ensemble.
It's an ensemble, so there's nobody. It's all unknowns. And I need $3 million. It's a period piece as well. Let's throw that in there. Okay. And then I've seen that movie. It's come across my desk, and I'm like, oh my God, these people have no understanding that they will probably never get their money back. And I even told you earlier, it's like, even if they win Sundance, or get into Sundance or South by or Toronto or any of these big festivals, the days of, buying out. Like I had the director of Palm Springs, the writer director of Palm Springs on, which sold, has the record for 17 point, excellent film, $17.5 million and 69 cents, making it the biggest sale ever at Sundance. But it had Andy Samberg in it, and it had J.K. Simmons in it, and it was like this big, and because it was a big thing. So people are like, oh look, the biggest sale ever at Sundance. I'm like, yeah, but look at the cast. That was pre-sold almost. It wasn't pre-sold. They actually sold it there. He told me the whole story. But and Hulu, by the way, just so everyone understands the business model of that purchase. Hulu bought that for $17.5 million and 69 cents, right? The chances of them actually recouping that money in that sale is minimal. And he said that. But the PR, the press that they got for buying the biggest movie at Sundance was probably worth about $80 to $100 million worth of PR.
I've talked about this before too. Netflix did it as well because they're no longer in the business of selling tickets to a film or attracting advertising with eyeballs. They're in the business of subscription. And one of the things, we may have talked about this once before, magazine publishers have known for a century that you will maintain your subscription and renew every year if there are two sections of the magazine that you like and want to keep seeing. It could be a 300-page magazine, but if there are two sections, you'll keep coming back. And Netflix followed that model. They're going to have just enough documentaries that if you like docs, you're going to keep coming back. Just enough Adam Sandler films that if that's your taste, you're going to keep coming back. But they don't need more than that. They need just enough to fill each section so that everybody says that's got something that I want and I'll maintain my subscription, versus how many people actually watch any individual film. The eyeballs on docs may be very low, but
you need them.
There are people that want to have docs and they'll maintain their subscription because of it. But each of the brands is different. Disney, of course, handles it completely different.
Yeah, and I mean, when we came on last time to speak, Disney Plus was just coming online. And we were just like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And now the estimates are in the next 2 to 3 years, it'll be bigger than Netflix. Because it's just massive in what they're doing. You can't compete with the mouse. I mean, the mouse is the mouse. It's just so difficult. And the kind of money that they have and the properties they have between Star Wars and Pixar and Marvel, and you just can't compete with that. And HBO's trying, and they're still not making it.
I wouldn't count Netflix out. I remember
no.
said 5 years ago, Netflix will be dead because they'll lose all their studio deals and they won't have any content. And what we tend to be very U.S. focused in what we do. They are doing terrifically around the world. Local content. We think of studio films versus series versus independent film. There's that fourth leg of the table, and that's local production around the world. And trust me, the world is just tired of seeing scenes from Hollywood and Beverly Hills in every film that comes on. They want to see scenes in their own backyard. They want to see their own talent. So that's another piece of the equation that just has to be considered there.
I have 2 words for you: Squid Games.
Okay, I've seen about the first 5 minutes, and since I can't get my wife to watch it with me, I'll be looking at it another time.
So I just finished it with my wife, and she actually, because you're right, if you can't watch it with your wife, it's very difficult to get that situation to go. But I got her to watch the first episode, and she saw it, and she got hooked. And look at it. It's a Korean show. They paid, apparently, according to the leaked documents, $21.4 million for it. Biggest show in the history of Netflix. Bigger than Stranger Things, bigger than Cobra Kai. It's insane.
Look, I'm a guy who's never raised on subtitles. My view, subtitles meant art film, and art film just didn't happen to be my thing. They're not bad films. They're just, we all have our own thing. Never watched subtitles. I am completely hooked on Call My Agent. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. French series. It's called 10% in France. They changed the title here. And they made a strategic decision not to dub it for the U.S. So it's on Netflix. Call My Agent if you haven't seen it. Another French series we saw, I forgot the name of it now, but we've started to see series from other countries.
Which we never. Yeah.
I mean, call my agent. I'm telling you, if you haven't seen it, it's just terrific.
And I think,
But let's not forget, let's not forget about this. And one other thing, sorry, on this,
sure.
colleagues that I have in South Africa have told me that if they have white characters in their films, especially romantic comedies, they can't travel at all. But black characters are doing better outside of South Africa than anything else that they can make.
Really?
Because they speak English, they have a U.S. way of producing and storytelling, and that they're doing just terrific export. And this is like a huge piece of their business now, is romantic comedies, rom-coms with black actors. Very important, because there's almost a shortage of that.
You're right.
For the world. So, this is that fourth pillar, which is films are starting to travel much more than we in the United States may give credit.
Yeah, and it's thinking of watching a Squid Games or a Call My Agent, that we didn't have access to it. The occasional foreign film would come in, or you would see the Kurosawa or the Fellini films, or the French New Wave or something like that would come in. But generally speaking, we weren't exposed to. I think the BBC was the closest to anything foreign that we would see, like Doctor Who or Luther or something, like shows, like actual series. But now, Squid Games and the thing can Call My Agent and things like that. The game is changing so rapidly, and it continues to change at such a rapid pace that, people who like yourself and I who've been here looking at this, it's, just the second that you feel like, okay, all right, SVOD is the way. It's just going to be SVOD from now on. What? No, it's AVOD now. Okay, so now it's AVOD. All right, so we're in AVOD now, and what's going on now? Okay, foreign. Okay, every year it's changing. It's almost changing month to month. It's so difficult to be a film producer, which brings me to my next question. And we discussed this as well off air, that you have seen a lot of disgruntled and angry independent producers and independent filmmakers who have such a tough time, as everything we've just illustrated in our conversation, finding a sales agent, finding a distributor that I can actually work with, and the frustrations that they're having. What advice do you have for that? How do you see them fixing that problem, or at least helping in some way?
Well, first, this is probably shrinking a 2-year master's course into about 10 or 15 minutes. So we hit the highlights. We just skim along the surface.
Sure.
They need to drill down a bit. Let me start with something which is unpleasant, and then I'll go on to all the positive stuff.
Okay.
Most art is bad.
Amen.
Most art is bad.
It's okay.
Painting from little kids, terrible. I've got 2 or 3 paintings from my grandmother that she would give me every few months. Look what I painted for you. It's still in the closet. Most art is bad. And most artists understand that they're making it for themselves. They're making it for the people they like. If you look at most artists in most disciplines, most are not in it for a profit. It's not their business. It's their hobby. It's their passion. You get some that matriculate up and they're at Saturday afternoon, art fairs at the park. You get some that are really at the top and they're in galleries. But most understand that this is a passion and it's a hobby. And yes, I'm going to paint the same lake over and over and give it to different family members who say thank you very much. When you look at filmmakers, they come into it for different reasons. But ultimately, because of the economics and because of the collaborative nature, there is an expectation among some or all involved that there will be an audience for the art. My grandmother didn't expect an audience of more than one for her painting when it was handed to me. But when you get filmmakers working on a project collaboratively, there's an expectation of an audience. And then, which leads me sort of to, why do filmmakers make a film? And I believe there's 3 reasons why an aspiring or emerging filmmaker should make a film. One, frankly, is for the education, for the learning experience. There are masters, we've heard stories about master painters where they've used x-rays and realized there was another painting under the original, the one you see. Why? Because they paint something and decided they didn't like it and just paint over it. That was their learning experience. That's one reason to make a film, and it's a terrific reason. Another is a showcase piece, one that you want to be able to demonstrate the skills of all involved, not just the actors, the director, the writer, the set designer, and so that you can go to festivals and have your film be seen and be somewhat of a calling card. And of course, the third is a profit. You're running it as a business. And there may be a fourth, but those are the three that I see. Every decision you make, from the story that you select to turn into a script, all the way through casting and production, has to be driven by one of those three, and it can't be all three. If you're making a profit, you're going to make certain decisions. If it's a showcase piece, you're doing something different. If it's a learning experience, you're doing something different. And it's recognizing first and foremost going in, what's my goal? And if it's one of the first two, which means it's not a profit, then you're looking to have the experience and hopefully have the film seen and have it in festivals and have everybody, have eyeballs, but not necessarily a business. If you're looking at that third pillar, which is this is going to be a profit, you need to start at the very beginning and make sure you've done everything you're going to need to do, which means, did I have a lawyer that wasn't my father's real estate attorney who's going to look at this and tell me he knows what's going on? Did I balance my budget to make the film as marketable as possible? How much money goes into cast versus special effects, versus location? Am I looking at the audience? I've always said, if a director comes to you and says, I'm making a film, here's my story, and the first thing you ask them is, who's it for? And if the director can give you a fairly narrow demographic, 18 to 24-year-old guys, middle-aged women, whatever it is, okay, great, he's got a target audience. When the director says, well, I'm making the film for me, the first thing producer does is sort of backpedal out of the room and then run. Because ultimately, every decision you're making, even if you're looking at theatrical, the rating of a film is highly important. If you're targeting 14-year-old girls versus 19-year-old young women, the rating and what you put on there, how you cast, even what clothes they're wearing, all of that's impacted by your target audience. So it has to start with that target audience and then knowing all the way through. I hate hearing about things. I finished the film. Did you have a photographer on the set? No, we couldn't afford it. Did you get a good lawyer to make sure that all the rights are taken care of? No, couldn't afford it. How's your chain of title? Working on it.
What's chain of title? Exactly.
And so there seems to be, and this is what they miss in film school, which is it's all about the craft, but not about the business.
Right.
And whatever business you go into, you tend, whether you're making shoes or sweaters or whatever, or cars, you tend to first look at what does the audience want, and that let me work backwards. Talk about Jason Blum. He's focused on what the audience wants. They want this type of storytelling. And so it's just, whenever you hear, I didn't have the budget for, and then fill in the blank, and whatever they didn't have the budget for was necessary to make the film commercially viable or to get it into the marketplace, then you have to step back and rework it.
It's interesting because if a canvas cost $100,000, a paintbrush costs $50,000, and paint costs $25,000 per can, you as a painter would think very carefully about what you paint. And you're like, okay, now where am I going to sell this painting, and how can I generate revenue with this painting? So that's why there's so much bad art in the world, because it's so cheap to finger paint. Right. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons why there's a deluge of bad cinema, because now the cost has come dramatically down. Because, like I've said this so many times on the show before, in the 80s, the only prerequisite was to finish. If you finished a movie, you made money. I mean, it could be, and believe me, I worked at a video store. I saw the stuff coming through the doors, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And it would sell. And it was just, and that was a completely different world, where now, not only do you have to finish it, but it has to have this. It's just so much harder to hit the baseball, because the pitches are so much faster and things are so much harder to, if I use the baseball analogy, where before, when Babe Ruth was around, they didn't throw 98, 99, 105 mile an hour fastballs. But Babe could hit the 93s or 94s all day. And that's why he was the best at the time. But could Babe Ruth survive in today's world while drinking and smoking and not actually doing all the things that he... No.
Well, he had to hit home runs because he couldn't run fast enough.
He couldn't run. How that man was alive as long as he was is beyond me. But you know what I'm saying? So it's just, the world is different. And I think filmmakers are still trying to hit the baseball of Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth's time, where it's now really where we're at now.
There's a perception among producers that the marketplace is so big with the explosion of
right.
platforms all over that whatever they make, there'll be a market for.
Right.
And while some of those platforms, yes, they're aggregating, they just need content, whatever it is, most of them are as selective as any platform has been in the past. And it's expensive to do that. And one of the things that I don't think producers truly understand is the cost of distribution. I hear about, the sales agent wanted me to pay the marketing up front. Well, the sales agents just decided they're going to work on a fee, but they're not going to take on risk. In every entertainment industry, every film industry transaction, besides somebody paying for something and somebody receiving it, risk is being transferred. We talked about Nicole Kidman being on a big series for Netflix. Netflix took the risk. She got paid her big fee. Somebody else who's working at scale, they're taking the risk, and whoever is funding it has transferred that risk to that person working at scale. There's always a risk transfer going on. And whenever you look at any transaction, whether it's hiring a writer or selecting a sales agent, at every step of the way, you want to say, who's in the risk boat? Who is taking that risk? Most distributors are risk adverse. If they were interested in risk, they'd be producers. Produce. They are risk adverse. They simply want to earn a fee for the service they're being provided. And a lot of producers feel that those distributors should, one, take on risk, but two, that the world should be designed to make their dreams come true. That this is how, and the industry is not designed to make your dreams come true. And so when they go to the sales agent, I'll read things sometimes posted on one of the Facebook groups that you've seen or part of. Oh my God, they asked me for $10,000 up front to cover the marketing expense, and then they want a 20% fee. Why should I pay them $10,000? They should pay it. It isn't a matter of one being bad or one being good. It's understanding that they're dealing with a company that is risk adverse, that isn't taking on anything other than risking their time to do the distribution. So
just as an example, the $10,000 marketing cost, which is a very broad thing.
I just threw out a number, but yes.
Yeah, no, but no, I've heard that number. 25,000, 50, I've heard 50, 100,000 for marketing, quote unquote marketing. In today's world, if someone's asking you for $10,000, and that might be for cost to deliver the film, that might be finishing it, might be closed captioning it, might getting the chain of title,
right.
There's those costs, and producers listening have to understand either you're going to pay those costs or they're going to pay those costs. And you can negotiate differently. If you bring it all to them, you can negotiate a better price. But I promise you, if they're going to do it, it's going to cost you more than if you did it by yourself, if you know what you're doing, and so on and so forth. But an actual marketing expense. So if a distributor X is asking $10,000, which is going to be purely for marketing, we're just going to get the word out. That is literally like spitting in the ocean, in my opinion. You can't get any sort of awareness.
I agree, and it should have a different label.
There's just no. Look, at 50,000, 100,000. I've worked with some of these distributors, and I've talked to them, and they're like, at 50 grand, what are you getting? And what kind of ROI is that going to get you? Are you going to get transactional? Are you going to? So it's that's a real gray area where a lot of distributors I find, should be labeled something else. But anyone listening, if someone's asking you for $10,000 purely marketing, it just makes no sense. You're right.
I agree. The label should be different. It may have to do with the third-party costs. Basically, the distributor should be earning the fee to cover their staff and their overhead out of whatever percentage they're charging. The third-party costs, whether, like you say, is it lawyers, is it chain of title, Is it all the various
closed captioning deliverables? Yeah.
Is it dubbing? All the various deliverables and things that need to be done, the QCs. That may be the risk they're unwilling to take. They can't read the marketplace. It's somewhat like a consignment shop. We've all been to these antique stores with a consignment shop where the consignor, I forgot the easy words, the person who's bringing the product into the store, they're still paying rent for that space. And if nothing sells in that month, they paid the rent because the person that owns the business is not willing to take on the rent risk. They're willing to take on the overhead risk of their staff sitting there. And so they get a percentage of each transaction, but they're not willing to take on the fixed cost. And it's the same sort of thing. You have to understand you're putting your film in the hands of a consignor. You're consigning it to them. And that they're going to want you to pay certain costs, and they'll cover their overhead out of their fee. And so that has to be built in when you're actually financing the film and putting it together. What are all those end costs of delivering
and
that I'm going to need to take care of?
And the key is like, if you don't want to play ball with them at the numbers that they're throwing out, they're like, that's fine. There's 450 other films sitting in line right behind you. And that's where the disheartening problem is for so many filmmakers, is that just they don't understand that the marketplace, it's not a seller's market. It is a buyer's market. There's way more product than there is need for product.
Level, yes.
Yeah, at that budget level.
Market over 30 million.
That's a different wall.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, once you start getting at 10 million and below, there's just so much product out there that's so difficult to make a profit because there's just so much competition. But yeah, once you start doing 30 millions and you got Bruce Willis in it, and that's a different. The competition's a lot less in that world, but there's more risk involved.
You mentioned Bruce Willis. Okay, I'll go see Die Hard 44. But there you have said to the distributor, I have prepaid a marketing by paying for Bruce Willis, whoever it is. I have bought marketing. So this comes with a marketing element. It comes with a built-in audience.
But so the funny thing is, though, and I have to ask you this, when you pay for Bruce Willis to be in your movie, you're paying for 30 years of marketing and brand awareness of the brand that is Bruce Willis. But that was done at a different time in the world where studios were spending obscene amounts of money on movie stars and getting it out there, where it's not as much like that anymore. Yeah, there's The Rock and there's a couple other, but the days of the movie star, that just because the movie star's in it, it opens at 20 million or 50 million. I remember Tom Cruise could open anything back in the day. Brad Pitt could open anything back in the day. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone. And then, now that's not the case anymore. So where's our future movie stars going to be? Because if you look at Marvel's building and making movie stars out of Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth. And this, Chris Hemsworth now becoming a movie star in his own right and has like other franchises outside of Marvel through Netflix. But he, again, needed the leverage of a studio to put him out there in a way that Chris Hemsworth will work for the rest of his life. Yeah. If Michael Madsen and Eric Roberts and Danny Trejo and all these guys all work, now nothing against any of those guys, they're all wonderful actors, but they continue to work for the rest of their lives based on the cachet that they had earlier in their careers or projects that they've been involved with. And that's just the way the game is played with talent. Where's the future going to be? Because we don't have those movie stars. Where's the next Bruce Willis going to come out of? As the question. Is it out of Squid Games? I don't know. I don't remember any of the actors in Squid Games. I don't think people look at things like that anymore as much.
I don't know, but I think that they'll be there because that's what actually differentiated the U.S. film business from the film business of any other country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
How many local stars can we name that are outside the U.S. that are global stars? Yes, one or two out of Hong Kong, one or two out of Italy, and that's about it. What the U.S. was able to create throughout the last century was global stars, and it's what differentiated the U.S. film business from the rest of the world. Nobody else could do that. And They still haven't. They still haven't. And so if there's a chance to continue to do it, it will be the U.S. And when you became a star in the past, if you became a good enough star somewhere else, if you're a star in Australia, you moved to the U.S. You know, Nicole Kidman became a U.S. studio star, not an Australian.
Yeah, Russell Crowe did as well. Yeah, so does Hugh Jackman. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are still, I mean, the U.S. is still viewed as the place that can create global stars, where we don't see that elsewhere. And I tend to think as long as the U.S. has a leadership role in storytelling, we know how to connect with an audience, because the United States is one of the few countries in the world that gets absolutely zero commercial or economic support from its government. Mm-hmm. There are countries that maybe they don't have supports. Let's say it's, I don't know, China still has China Film Promotion, but they'll have
Australia, Canada has government support.
That local films must play in theaters for a certain amount of time. Local films must have their version of network premieres, that they have carve-outs for local films, and some have subsidies and some have both. The U.S. has neither, which forces us, and Hong Kong, by the way, was similar, which forces us to take a purely commercial view of filmmaking. And it's why we've been successful, because we haven't actually depended on those subsidies. In France, you don't make a film for the public. You make a film for that board of financiers who are all over the age of 70, who love to see 3-minute panning shots of a mountain. I love French films, but some of them should hang in the Louvre. They're so slow. Mm-hmm. And so, their audience is different. And a country that has, Nigeria is a great example. They have no subsidies whatsoever, and they have a great tiny film industry, but it's all commercial based. And they're all successful because they can only make what they can sell. And so I think we sort of I got off topic a little bit, but I think stars will continue to evolve and be created in the U.S. for some time.
So what trends do you see coming? Because I was kind of joking about it earlier with like SVOD. I remember the first year I was at AFM is all SVOD and OTT, SVOD, OTT, SVOD, OTT, and then the year after, like, it's all about AVOD. And TVOD is pretty much just the side to side thing, like whatever. No one ever makes money in TVOD anymore, unless you're a studio, or you could drive traffic, or you have Bruce Willis in the movie or something like that. So what are the trends that you're seeing? Is AVOD still the growth area for independents at a certain level? Sure.
I mean, there's AVOD, and then I forgot the acronym for it, but there's linear advertising. Which is basically, it's being programmed for you. I mean, if you look at any of our broadcast networks, NBC, it's advertising supported. It's just linear versus on demand, and you'll continue to see some of those types of channels being created. Yeah, I agree with you. TVOD will slowly fade away because the economics for the filmmaker will be such that I'm just not going to put it there. It may have a moment in time where you'll have releases, what's it, Disney Plus or Disney Plus?
Oh, it's a PVOD, Premium Video on Demand.
Yes, but where Disney actually did this, which is if you subscribe to the channel, you still can't have it in the certain window. You have to pay the premium. And so we'll see some of that premium to offset those who don't want to go to the theaters. But I think the normal transactions, if I'm going to go find a small independent film and pay $1.99, we come back to what you said, is there's no marketing ability to make that happen. There's no way to create awareness. You look back at the record industry 50 years ago, yeah, you'd see some garage bands press 100 singles and sell them Saturday afternoon outside their school out of their trunk, but it's not a business. And self-distribution in that way won't be a business. I mean, I know that people are going to be listening to this and saying self-distribution is an avenue to go onto. Well, you might be able to bypass the sales agent and go to Netflix yourself or go to some of the platforms yourself. But ultimately, they can't deal with the friction of connecting with individual producers. They need somebody in the middle. They need an aggregator that when they know the file is being sent to them, that aggregator QCs for them. They don't have to do it themselves. They don't need to send out 10,000 profit or statements or whatever they do, transactions. They just don't need the supplier pool being that big. So there's always going to be those intermediaries. But where do I see it? I think, it's we'll still have free television because governments around the world are going to require that. And it'll be over the air always. We'll have AVOD, we'll have SVOD. The bundle that we used to have on cable will just become a bundle of SVODs where we're paying 4 or 5 subscriptions. I mean, in my house, we've got HBO, we've got Disney. I haven't stepped up for Hulu yet.
It's well worth it. Well worth it for Hulu, by the way.
We've got Apple. I've got 3 Apple boxes and a bunch of DirecTV boxes, and it's
yeah.
nuts.
You gotta cut the DirecTV. That's just insanity. That's insanity.
Well, but here's the thing that I still am not able to time shift live sports
because you haven't gone to YouTube TV or Hulu.
But they're not all there yet.
We could discuss off air, but I'm almost positive that you have access to not only live sports but to every live sports if you buy the package. So if you want Major League Baseball, you could buy Major League Baseball. I cut off DirecTV alongside. Nothing against DirecTV, but just cable in general, cable and all that stuff. Because I love the ability to be everything on demand and record things endlessly and all that kind of stuff. But if you're going to invest anymore, and this is not an ad for Hulu, the only reason I like Hulu is not as much for their originals, is that they have basically all the network television recorded all the time. So it's like you get tons and tons of stuff. So it's really a great channel. Sorry, again, I get paid nothing for Hulu.
Look, AVOD and SVOD are going to be out there for
Yeah.
those who and I think the channels that we're seeing some of them doing that you can have the non-advertising versus the advertising. Just do you want to pay the less amount or the higher amount? I think that price points in subscriptions are very important, to have multiple tiers of price points and understand that audiences have varying levels of ability to pay, varying levels of interest in the content. And so I could see some people going straight to an SVOD for things that they like. I mean, I subscribe to a sports, network, a sports league rather. At the same amount, I'd be paying for Disney, but it's important to me. In other places, I'll go AVOD because it just doesn't matter so much.
Right, exactly. So it's, our habits are changing is general. Just, before it was, remember cable, when cable showed up, like, oh my God, 40 channels. And now it's like literally just thousands of channels around.
And there's going to be more because subscription revenue pays more than advertising revenue. The reason we're seeing so much being produced is because what we are willing to pay in those subscriber fees are much higher than they earn through advertising, so they can make more.
Yeah. Disney, look, when Disney finally showed up to streaming, it took them, 10, 11 years after Netflix showed up. They came in and they came in hard and quick, and look what they've done. They've killed it. Whereas something like HBO, who's been around forever and has the brand recognition and they have great content, they can't. They're not close to Disney.
Disney, and this affects everybody that's listening more as a consumer
Sure.
than just a filmmaker. But Disney has long understood the value of brand. 50 years ago, no one went to a Universal picture.
Disney,
because Universal or a Warner Brothers or Paramount. But Disney had a brand, and this is their core competency. It's why they bought Pixar. It's why they bought Lucas. It's why they bought Marvel. They understand the value of brand, and they're skilled at how to monetize that brand. So when they stepped up and went to their channel, they approached it the same way. We're staying in brand segments. Boy, if you look at this, brands put right across the screen. Which brand do you want? And National Geographic in there as well.
You read my mind, yeah.
Yeah. And so they are all about brands. They don't want the independent film. It's got to fit perfectly into their brand, and it's all in-house. And that's what they're doing. In my view, there's only 2 brands in the world in film. One is Disney, and the other is Troma.
On both sides of the spectrum.
Yes. if you're a Troma fan and Troma's made a film, now I think Blumhouse is
Blumhouse is getting there. Yeah.
There are a few others here and there, but if you want to look multi-decade brands in film, Disney and Troma.
I've never heard that before, but you're absolutely right. If you're a fan of Troma, you're going to watch whatever Troma puts out, but you won't watch whatever Warner Brothers puts out or whatever Universal puts out. It's just not that. And Disney is
the benefit of brand is it reduces marketing costs and therefore it reduces risk. Because if you're a fan of Marvel, you don't have to see a $50 million theatrical marketing campaign. Just as long as you're aware the next Marvel film is out, you're going to see it.
And especially look, they just released Shang-Chi, who is no offense, D-level character in the Marvel universe. And I mean, I didn't collect Shang-Chi comics. It's not even in the top 50 of characters, but yet it made a boatload of money. It's a very good film from what I hear. Black Panther was a D-level character, CD level character. So it's amazing what they've done. And now you're hooked on their storyline because you've got to see Black Widow and Shang-Chi to continue the entire storyline that they've created in the phases of Marvel. And now you have to watch the Disney Plus shows because it's all worked in and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty ingenious. I think Troma should do something like that. But Jonathan, where can people sign up? First of all, when is AFM this year? Dates?
We can have the 1st through the 5th of November. Sign up online, AmericanFilmMarket.com. I mean, the cool thing about it is just all the education. We got, I think, 48 or 50 sessions, 150 speakers, and just great people who couldn't always, even if they were in LA, it's like, well, I can't spend a half day driving to Santa Monica, this and that. But yeah, an hour in the office. Because let's face it, if you're at a studio in Burbank and we've asked you to be at a session at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday in Santa Monica, that's a half-day commitment.
You're absolutely right.
And so the caliber of speakers we have is terrific, and it's just fun to network on that platform, as you say. But
and I will be there, talking about distribution with my guest Linda Nelson from Indie Rights as well. So we're going to be talking all about distribution and where we're going to be doing that. And
in video on demand. So
she's fantastic. She's wonderful. And then where do people go? AFM.com, AmericanFilmMarket.com?
AmericanFilmMarket.com.
AmericanFilmMarket.com. Jonathan, it is always a pleasure talking to you.
I enjoy it as well.
And we always have very interesting conversations, to say the least, about the world of distribution. So I appreciate you, my friend.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and good luck to all the producers who are out there with all their projects.